Excellent. Good morning. Thank you. And yes, it is a very, very exciting time. I mean, last week, 10 days ago, when the rules suddenly landed out of thin air, all of us said, wow, finally, after a long, 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 long wait, it's here. Let's look into it. So, in one way, it is great. Finally, we have clarity, we have the rules, we know what we have to do. But also on the other side, we have the challenge because the rules have landed bang in the middle of the financial fiscal year for many of us. And that means often the budget cycle has passed. Some of us may have Privacy Act implementation cost in our budgets already money saved aside. Some of us don't. So all of us will have to face that challenge of budgeting for it, planning the changes, tracking the changes, executing the changes, testing it, validating it, and then setting a governance that keeps it running at the level of quality that the legislation requires us to. So we have a situation where there is a lot of work and a lot of opportunity for everybody. For the enterprises, finally, to put everybody, all the enterprises' commitments on the ground and show that they are fully compliant with the intent of the legislation. For professionals, DPOs, privacy professionals across the country, it is a great opportunity and a rubber hits the road moment. How do we execute this change within our own organizations? So our commitment and our contribution exactly a year from now will be judged on how well we run the next 12 months. And finally, for the consultants who advise others on how best to do it, how best to implement the right privacy controls, it's of course a great opportunity and a hell lot of work over the next 12 months. So exciting times ahead. And with that, I will hand it over to Priya and Karthikeyan, our regular subject matter experts and contributors, to share some of the key points. And they will be doing it in an interesting question answer format. I hope you like the format because I know you will like the content, right? So over to you, Priya and Karthikeyan.
Thanks, Sua. It's really an exciting time, and whole LinkedIn was filled up with this, and we understand that. I think let's quickly start with key takeaways. Recently, Karthikeyan kind of summarized it, and it shared our group. But I'd like to take that opportunity to reiterate what was listed during our last DPDPA session that we took, and he shared it. So just a quick summary what has happened in the new rules that we are seeing. The timeline. It is May 13th, 2027 is a hard deadline to ensure the compliance. Secondly, what we want you all to focus on is please see Act plus rules together. Don't independently see them in order to get a complete picture, because during our discussions, we observe that colleagues are looking at the rules, but they have kind of not going back and clubbing it with Act. That's a very important point while you kind of look at DPDPA. See the complete picture. Because what Act does is it sets the principle, and rules are really the operationalized procedures around that. So you need to read both, take that into consideration. Retention is a bit complex, and we have been deliberating, discussing it. Yesterday, we were having a meeting with Data Security Council of India. I think this was the most important point they all highlighted was retention is complex. It is 1 year minimum for logs, so we'll touch base on it. And security with the new rules, they have really made it prescriptive. They have talked about encryption, access controls, logging, backups are now mandatory. So in our further question answer session, we'll touch base on that. SDFs, they feel heightened burden. There are a lot of things they need to do, and along with they need to have a formal DPA role aligned with them. Penalties are serious, 250 crores. And as on today, we didn't saw any list that for cross-border transfer they would have shared. It's not available yet. There is no list available for the backlisted countries. And children data requires verified parents' consent, and it needs a very robust mechanism. Again, we need more clarity on this area. And last but not least, a quick talk about breach notification. No major changes in there. What was in the act, the rule still keeps it to 72 hours to notify the board and with comprehensive details. So on that note, while we start on this discussion, these were just quick highlights that we found the changes when the rules were rolled out, just top 10 points. But when we talk about today's session, as Suha rightly highlighted, it's more about protection, because when we look at a data protection officer role, it is more aligned with protection. Yes, you need to have a clear idea about what law is saying, regulation is expecting us to. But our focus today will be mostly on section 6 and 7 of this rule, which talks about it really talks about how you are going to protect your data, because as it's prescriptive, it's clearly defined in DPDPA. We need to take care of that part. And second key important aspect is breach. How you are going to kind of avoid that? One, plus in case it happens, what is your going to be the process for same? So in today's session, the way Karthikeyan and I have divided it, we are going to kind of divide and have a discussion around section 6, have some questions, we'll answer those. We have listed that for most commonly questions that were asked, and same will go for section 7. Over to you, Karthikeyan.
No, I totally agree. And Priya, thanks for summarizing the rules that have come out. Just to add to one or two points more in that summary, one is the 90-day grievance addressal, which is a very interesting part because which was almost not there in
Yeah,
DPDPA.
yeah.
They told about a grievance officer, but they never said that it would be some timeline or turnaround time. And when we read the rules, we saw a 90-day TAT, which was significant step towards, and it's very different from DSRs. So
Yeah.
it's not right to access or right to nominate or other rights. We are talking about a grievance. So when the rights have not been completely exercised, and if you have a complaint, when you complain to a data fiduciary, the grievance clock starts ticking. So 90 days from them. And that was interesting. Another important aspect, which was mentioned by Priya also, is around the personal data breach notification. So we knew that there would be 72 hours, but what was really interesting to see in the rules, and this is we'll discuss in Rule 7 when we have this frequently asked and session between us, is that what would be the so it can be any mode of communication, but what exactly will we need to notify? And especially when it comes to the data fiduciary being notifying it to the data protection board as well as to data principals. And that within 72 hours, again, very interesting phrase, which was again and again repeated, was becoming aware of any personal data breach. So what is becoming aware of? So we can also have a little discussion around that. With that, I think,
Absolutely.
Priya, let's dive into the questions.
Yeah,
And let's start with the DPDPA Rule 6,
yeah,
because reasonable security safeguards have been a term which has been well recognized within our industry, especially when the time of GDPR, that we all know that, okay, there is some reasonable security safeguards, but it was always left for companies and data fiduciaries, or at that time, data controllers in GDPR, to interpret and see what is that reasonable security safeguards they are thinking about. But when
right.
we come to Rule 6 in our DPDPA rules, it was very interesting to see the kind of prescription that
Yeah,
was given. And that actually brings me to the first question to you. And since you are a DPO and implementing this day in, day out for yourself, so what does reasonable security safeguards mean in practice for organization for you?
right. It's interesting. The first thing that hits me is what are you going to write in data processor agreement in case it's a bigger organization? Because when we talk about reasonable security safeguards, though they have kind of given a prescription around it, but I think Safeguard is never about perfections, it's about prudence. It's about commitment to implement at least what is basic, appropriate, risk-based controls to protect sensitive information or personal information, where we can balance it with the practical realities of organization. So when we look at the word, because this has been under debate, that what is that reasonable security safeguard? It may vary from organization to organization. How will I put a boundary around it? That, what categorizes, will these 10 points suffice as reasonable security safeguards, or only two? So I think we need to see it from a perspective of implementing technical, administrative, and physical measures. All three areas, not to see them in silos. We have to kind of include reasonable safeguard of security safeguard includes all these three areas: technical, administrative, and physical. How all three areas together combine, and they can protect the data and information systems for unauthorized access, use, disclosure, alteration, destruction. So what the prescriptive details that are given in the law, and it does, we have to kind of start from identifying the risk. The moment you start as an organization on this for section 6, if you have to kind of close on this, you have to first do the risk assessment and see what is existing controls that are in place, so that you get an idea that where are we, what is our security posture. It may be even 2%, but at least you know the journey where we need to take it further. So first do the risk assessment, identify what all requirements are required, what are the technical, administrative, and physical controls that you need to place in, audit or do risk assessment as per that. Then the second key aspect, which is a part of reasonable security safeguard, is encryption. Encryption of data at rest and transit. This is mandatory. They have clearly written about it, that we need to think about this aspect. We need to think about strict role-based access and least privilege access. We have to ensure that. That is the third important aspect that we need to cover under reasonable security safeguard. Trainings, let's not forget that training and awareness as a pillar when we look at from technology perspective, people and process perspective. So technology aspects we can apply, with respect of technology, we can look at encryptions. With process, we can close the risk assessments, and we can put access also with the help of technology and process. But one of the main firewall in every organization is a human firewall. So from that perspective, employee training also is a part of reasonable security safeguard. We should not forget that. Important aspect is maintaining logs. It is very critical. I'll just touch base a bit deeper on the next questions. So that is the fifth point, that is as a part of reasonable security guard. Third party, we all are using cloud services, third party vendors, in case we are using clouds. So we need to also ensure, we are kind of, they also are relying on, and they also are, the basic security measures are in place for them. And business continuity, once we are done with these things of assessment, identifying what risk we have, encryption, access control, employee training, audit, trail and logging should be there, third party risk assessment, then the next step is really business continuity, having backup and response plan available, and then periodically reviewing all these aspects, security measures, and looking what we can improve in here. So if we talk from reasonable security safeguards, if we cover these 8 areas, at least every organization who has to start with, at least the first ticks are done, and they can at least claim that the basics are done. Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So, fantastic holistic picture, Priya, that you have painted, especially from a risk assessment to how we are actually making sure that how business as usual and maintenance is going on. There are a couple of very interesting insights which are also given, and I will just ask you as a person who is sitting outside your company, and somebody will come up to you and ask, okay, there are things which have been prescribed in Rule 6A, that is encryption, obfuscation, masking, use of virtual tokens mapped to personal data. So, Priya, out of these four, which are there in your organization? What
So I
are you
think,
using?
yeah, so the kind of organization we are using all. But in case somebody comes in and they want to just say, what is that first start point? I think there are two start points. One is encryption and access control. They
Hmm,
are, they really complement well each other in
hmm,
everything, in everything. when we started on GDPR journey, when we went to cloud, DevOps, everything, you see everywhere data is somewhere in rest or it is in transit. And on top of it, there are access controls. They really complement each other. So if you have to start on, so we have everything in our organization. For other organizations, I'm sure they have. In case you don't have these aspects, the first two top things that you need to work on is one is access control. You know why? Because if even if it is if access control fail or are bypassed, still encryption is there to save you. And in case you have access control, it can restrict, who may receive your decryption keys, making key management part of the risk reduction strategy. So, what for those two aspects, I say at least if you don't think of multiple aspects, at least go for these two areas, that is access control and encryption. Think about them, look at these areas. If we work on these two areas, I'll assure you, you will prevent majority of breaches.
Perfect. And one more important aspect that comes into mind is that when we talk about encryption, it is a very costly thing, and a lot of people come back and say, should I encrypt everything in my company? And if
Yeah,
I do that, it will be very costly. So
absolutely.
what is your response to that? That how, with these rules coming in, what do you think that we should encrypt or we should not encrypt?
Absolutely. I think the more we kind of discuss about these aspects, it always start with data classification.
Hmm.
Anything, as you know, it's just a starting point is everything is data classification. As an organization, you have to know as a DPO, what is that
Hmm.
critical data you are saving in your environment?
Hmm.
And what is that medium risk data? What is that low risk or what is the journal? It's just a raw data. It's just a data. It's not even an information.
Hmm.
Because in case you don't have that understanding about critical, non-critical, or just a raw data, not even as an information, you will be putting
Hmm.
controls on everything, which is a
Yes.
waste of
Yes.
resource. It's not even compliance. You're not even meeting the compliance. So the first
Exactly.
thing, please go do a data classification, identify from client perspective, vendor perspective, and your employee perspective what data you are
Hmm.
dealing with. Categorize that, classify that, and then based on that, Karthika, as you rightly highlighted, see where you need to put encryption
Yes.
because you have to take cost factor also into
Hmm.
place. Somewhere you can put access controls in mediums, but in case it's high sensitive, then you can keep both. And then
Hmm.
you can just do a permutation combination based on the data that you have.
Perfect, and great answer. Thank you for that. On a very separate note, I see for the first time somebody really talking, or some law actually talking about visibility, accessing such appropriate logs being monitored, reviewed, enabling detection, unauthorized access, which is very similar to what we used to do, SIMSOAR, and we will have event logs and solutions put in. But for personal data, we never thought that it will be a
Absolutely.
particular prescriptive rule which will come in. And that's where my next question comes in. Why is log management so critical for compliance and for incident response here?
My perspective is they edit it because one, it is critical as we all know, but I think the AI factor also is taking part of here. While we are documenting AI agent policy in our organization, especially for fully autonomous kind of agents, it is logging is extremely important. We see that, and the more and more as a country, as we go towards, we all are digitized. We have a lot of digital aspects within our country that we are using because all our personal data is all over the places. And then on top of it, when we use the AI layer, I think GOI and Meti, they do understand that now having that traceability. One is that we know unsaid, it is unsaid that it should be there, but one is they understand the criticality of it in terms of if I want to tomorrow delete my data as a having PI data, any company is having this, any service I've provided, it is important to understand where the data is going. And
Hmm.
in case we don't have right logs,
Hmm.
and how are we going to ensure that, the lawful handling of personal data is going to be here? Because some
Hmm.
or other way, somebody will come back. They will say, I want to
Yes.
see the logs, I want to see where it is going.
Hmm.
In case we are not
Hmm.
managing or maintaining that, it will be really
Hmm.
difficult to kind of get it to that grassroots level for investigators, for people like us, and
Hmm.
as a citizen of India, all three levels.
Yes.
It's really important, and I'm glad they
Hmm.
took this consideration and they have edited
Hmm.
explicitly.
as you mentioned logs, so I keep on thinking about retention, because there has been so many discussions, especially in so many clients that I have handled, that what is the retention period, what is the retention policy. And it was something very interesting to see that they said 1 year retention policy.
Yeah,
And when they said
absolutely.
1 year retention policy, the first question that each and every one of us in this call has is that there's so much of challenge, and there will be so many challenges that the even the organizations will face with this 1 year retention policy. So how do you see that, and what's your take on it?
Honestly, this area was already a challenge to be to all the CISOs, DPOs, and GRC leaders that work on retention was already a problem, except for when we have to it with client, because in contracts it's explicitly mentioned that data destruction and retention. But for other data, based on the law of land, it was already a challenge, I can assure. When we saw this 1 year retention, it really added on to that challenge. Because see, we have to see it from a perspective, we just talked about data classification, and organizations need to kind of now, certainly, as I said, they need to categorize the personal data with respect to purpose, sensitivity, and then based on that sensitivity, they need to add the retention timelines correctly. What the confusion and challenge is going to be, it is alignment with other laws. Though I think most of the organizations, we do keep data for logs, etc. We do keep it for 1 year. But in parallel, it is we have to see in alignment with other laws. It is sector specific regulations where it comes
Yes.
tax, finance, telecom, and they have longer retention periods.
Retention periods.
Now balancing DPDPA, erase when purpose is served. It is
Hmm.
clearly written that
Hmm.
erase when purpose is served principle.
Hmm.
These obligations really create a compliance conflict. I'm
Hmm.
sure within some time we'll have more clarity when the discussion happens,
Hmm.
when we read the and ors of the rules that have come. But yes, I
Hmm.
think this point is a key challenge. And there are
Hmm.
legacy system, there are technical constraints because we all have legacy systems, and they may lack automation of deletion
Hmm.
capabilities. How are we going to do about that? In
Hmm.
my previous organization, before we fully went digital, I know there are files, manual files. So those kind of aspects, alignment with law, legacy systems, technical
Yeah.
constraints, this is surely the most, as I see, everybody may
Hmm.
have a different opinion, but I think this is a major challenge because we may need to work on the clarity on it. We may need to kind of take
Hmm.
metis and other help to see it more clarity on what we understand, is it in alignment what they expect.
Mm. No, I totally agree, and it is such an interesting thing, na, that when we were actually very young in the industry, and we were actually implementing ISO 27001 and ISMS, and the first thing used to come in backup, and we were like, we were told the CIA triad, we were told confidentiality, integrity, availability, and availability was always backup, and with that the CIOs and the IT heads did a fantastic job with the grandfather, father, son, child kind of backup. And now you
Yeah,
suddenly go back to them and say, hey guys, you need to erase. You need to you need to find personal data in all of it and erase it. And there's a retention period. And there is a huge conflict between availability and backups and this new thing which has come with retention periods. So I think it would be a very interesting journey, especially how the CIOs, CISOs, they
absolutely.
navigate this situation. It would be interesting to see. And with
Absolutely.
that, another question that comes out is that how can backups be secured to avoid becoming a vulnerability point here? Because it becomes a challenge to erase in the backup. And with legacy systems, we already have seen this challenge happening. So what is your take on that?
Yes, I think it, to be very honest, it still is a challenge a bit, not as a retention, because I'll just quote an example. If we have put some data into deep archive, I'm just giving an example, a very deep archive we have put, we may understand it will take, say, 4 hours to come back. And we recently faced it took us 48 hours to come back to get that data. So it's a
Wow.
constant balance and challenge, I can assure you.
Hmm.
But then when we talk about backup, end of the day, customers express has to be a total replica and mirror of everything we have, which is
Hmm.
like doubling your cost for everything. So again, when we talk about backups, we again need to classify it.
Hmm.
What the most challenge I find in the backups is the classification, because if we don't start from the start, see, we have legacy systems. I'm just giving an example. For example, we have production or we have development environment. Anyway, production takes a lead. If I want to just back up my production, but if we have not done the right tagging, if the wrong tagging is there, even for two systems or two servers, or for that matter, two assets, it's going to change the whole dynamic. Tomorrow, it may be a problem in those areas. So I think when you start on the backup journey, we all have legacy systems. I think the most critical point, backup, before we go actually what needs to be done in backup is a right tagging, classification of right areas that needs to be backup. I think this is the most challenging thing. It's not that black and white always, but at least we need to work on that area, that what needs to be backed up. And now the things have changed. We need to kind of make them immutable. We need to have them cross location. There are different aspects to it. So one, we need to encrypt backup at rest and transit. That's for sure. I think the most important aspect in backup now, as a security leader, is at key management. And we really need to take care of that aspect. And yes, access controls that are all common: least privilege, multi-factor authentication, role-based access, that are there. And I think the key aspect is isolated backups. In case your data is really critical, and we have worked on it, and it is really critical, we need to have a air-gapped or immutable storage. And but it's very cost heavy. You need to
Yes.
really see that area. What is that critical area that is most important to you? At least segregate that. And my recommendation will be air gap or make that immutable storage. It comes with cost, but at least you know what you are saving in. And most important is the regular integrity checks. When you go to client and say these are working as per contractual obligation, they come back and do your risk assessment, they do ask for checks. And over the past, I have observed 2 days back, what we said is working wonderful, suddenly it was not working. So do perform hash-based verifications, etc. But yes, the key aspect is right tagging, right classification, and putting your backup strategy based on that.
Fantastic. I hear you. I hear backup hygiene. And I truly remember my days when we would say, okay, go back, open one file and see whether the backup and restoration is working or not. And then you are going back and saying, yes, it is. Said that, one last point on Rule 6 before we conclude with Rule 6 is that we understand that data processors are there in the ecosystem. We understand that there is so much of this processing activity which has been outsourced by us data fiduciaries to these data processors. And within this whole DPDPA and the rules that came out, data processors don't have any obligation. And when I say obligation, especially when I now talk about reasonable security safeguards, what is your take? How do we bind these data processors with respect to reasonable security safeguards? Because we understand when it comes to Rule 7, first thing is becoming aware of any personal data breach. Now, that data breach is happening at a processor end. How will I come to know about it? And will it be too late? So all of that is what I'm actually referring to, Priya. And what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think, with when we look at our country, we and especially when we all have joined here, and most of us are from corporate sector, I think as a country we missed on a very important aspect of our pillar, that is social aspect. And when we were having these DPTPA discussions with Meti and all, we really understood, we see it from a very corporate lens, which is still a four tower based. I think, but when it comes to the fifth part of it, that is social part of it, the whole dynamics of DPDPA changes. So to answer your question, when we look at processors, we have to see it from an ecosystem where they are from an extremely remote place, because they are also
Hmm.
processing sometime.
Yeah.
It's digitization has gone so deep down that we
Hmm.
need to see it from, see, you will go to a small village, they are using they are using all the aspects of Paytm, etc., and banks and all. But then you
Hmm.
talk them, I'll give you this work if you kind of ensure that these aspects are met. So what
Hmm.
I'm trying to say in here is, we have to really categorize it. We have
Hmm.
to categorize based on the kind of see, it depends how long and big your organization is. For example,
Hmm.
our organization, we don't go with vendors who are not basic certified for few aspects. But
Hmm.
when it goes down, we have just started on this journey because everybody
Hmm.
has to do it. So we can still talk to medium and large organization, and through data processor agreement with our vendors, we can bind them that, these
Yes.
are at least three aspects we want you to comply. It can be encryption or it can be access control. They may not go for certification. But I think the key challenge is where it's not a medium organization or large, it's a very small scale organization. What is that we are going to how are we going to kind of club them into it? Because they don't have any understanding what we are asking. So I think that aspect, it's still better with medium and large, where we can bind them. Large, we are easily bind them. Medium, with some elements. I think small is going to be a challenge. And over the time, as industry colleagues, we need to see how to kind of get a solution for them, because they will not get business. They will have to kind of push up themselves to get to a level so that vendors start picking them, organizations start picking on them. So yes, some handhold to them, but then it's going to be a different journey and they will have to join the race.
Perfect, perfect. So I think with that, Rule 6 is over for us, and we have discussed it in detail. And Suva, we want to go to Rule 7, which is basically intimation of personal data breach. Your thoughts on Rule 6, Suva? You're on mute.
Rule 6 is the meat of what the legislation intends us to do. It is not voluminous in its text, but it's
Yeah, yeah,
extremely work intensive in its execution. And I think that is where we will have to, all of us, keep collaborating, keep communicating, keep sharing in this forum and in other places, to
absolutely.
make sure that we continuously achieve alignment of thought process within the profession, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The second part of Rule 6 is the incremental cost. And we all know at our levels, in our stages of our career, that cost is everything. A lot of cost is going to get attached to business processes, products, and in some shape and form it will start flowing to customers who will get charged this cost, right? In what shape and form it will happen, we don't know, we cannot even control really. But as practitioners, as we start implementing within our organizations, it becomes incumbent on us to be very, very conscious that we do it at the minimum possible cost, because all of it will get aggregated and it will start having impact on how much does our product and our services cost. So we are not just privacy professionals, we will have to wear the business hat as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think rightly
Completely agree
highlighted.
with you. Yeah.
Completely agree. Yeah, yeah. And I think as you rightly highlighted, Suha, this looks like a 2 point, but I can from experience say this is these 6 and 7 sections. This is the most critical aspect. And as a leaders, you all need to have a transparency, and you need to have a visibility where data is going. And you need to have some good tools for that, that's for sure. Okay, Karthika, I think I'll take up the hat of asking the questions now. And I think we have been talking about Rule 7, which really talks about intimation of personal breach. It talks about breach notification, 72-hour deadline, and board intimation, which we thought will change a bit. But we didn't see multiple changes in that. So if you have to ask you a question, do you think 72-hour breach notification, and everybody is talking about it, why is this 72-hour breach notification window important that everybody who has joined this session, they should know about it?
Perfect. And before I answer that, I will always remember the 6 hour notification window of certain.
Certainly.
Because
Yeah.
that notification window actually told us what it really means to have a notification window,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
really made us think twice before even started working on this kind of notification windows. So from
Right.
there the journey starts. And also when we were doing our GDPR, so working with a lot of clients and a lot of sectors, we figured it out that there is enough amount of data or details that people accumulate in the first 24 hours. It also takes some time for them to contain a breach, to do their own challenges that they are facing with respect to any attack that has happened, to get some forensic investigators. So it's a parallel track that actually starts working. So there's a team which will be really working on the data breach, and then there will be a team which will be working on the reporting of that data breach. And that is where it becomes very interesting, because the first thing that I want to highlight here is the repetitive phrase that has been used in Rule 7 of becoming aware. Now, this becoming aware plays a very significant part, because you might be sitting on a data breach for months, but you were not aware of it.
Yeah.
But once you became aware, what are the steps that you took? It doesn't mean that you are shrugging away or shying away from your responsibility. You will, or you may be reprimanded on the aspect of you not becoming aware at the right time. And you would be asked to put in tools and technologies which will help you in identifying data breach in your ecosystem. But said that, what are the steps? Because it is about notification to whom? Who are you intimating? And that is very clearly mentioned in Rule 7, that you are intimating the Data Protection Board of India, which will be set up, which is the authority. And the second important aspect is the data principles that you are actually trying to inform. And when we are doing this, it is another phrase which caught my eye was the same line in Rule 7, which after saying becoming aware, said to the best of its knowledge. So it said that on becoming aware of an personal data breach, the data fiduciary shall, to the best of its knowledge, intimate to each affected data principal. And when it comes to data principles like you and me, we might understand data privacy, cybersecurity. SUVA is a champion of data protection, but the act or the rule is not talking about us. It is talking about people who are digitally illiterate, maybe, and their data has been breached. How will they be informed? What is that? That how you will dumb it down to the level that a layman can understand what has happened. And that is where it says that in a concise, clear, and plain manner, without delay, through the user account. And it's very important, because in the world that we live in today, there's so much of scamming, there's so much of spoofing that happens. So it talks about that through his or her user account, you in any mode of communication, SMS, email, and in larger data breaches, we have seen that people have taken to social media, to newspapers, to other media platforms. So it can be referred in any way, but you will have to intimate the data principal without delay. And it is also being talked about that whosoever he is registering with the data fiduciary. So the word is not data processor anywhere. So it doesn't matter whether a data processor having a breach, and that's where I will come to the question 72R. So we need to make sure that we are so thoroughly coupled when it comes to our contracting with data processors, that this breach notification, we cannot afford to lose time between the data processor and us, or even a sub-processor. I have seen in multiple organizations, especially where digital assets are being kept and being worked upon, that there are multiple sub-processors helping a data processor. So that
Absolutely.
whole chain that we are actually working with, and which is not going to go away, guys. It is not that it will happen overnight, that you will have only a data processor and a data fiduciary. These sub-processors will stay in the ecosystem. It is
Absolutely.
just that how we are able to bind them, and what is that chain of command that we set in. And then we start also making sure that are we able to simulate it. And I'll come to that when that question arrives. But the most important thing is, within that 72 hours, what is it that is expected from us?
Absolutely.
And that is one of the questions I remember that we were discussing, that it basically says that it clearly in 5 points tell us: first, description of the breach, including the nature, extent, and the timing of its occurrence very clearly. It is saying that, okay, there has been a data breach. This is the nature, maybe the mobile numbers, maybe the email IDs. What is the extent? How many people got impacted? And the timing of its occurrence. It happened maybe in past 24 hours or maybe over the weekend. And that is where you start off with. You will have to inform that why I am reaching out to you, because what is the impact that you might face. And with that, we are also telling them what is it that I am doing to mitigate it. So
Right.
I might be resetting your password. Next time you log in, your passwords will not work. You will have to reset it. Or there will be a multi-factor authentication system by default I'm setting up. You cannot now actually get into your account directly. You will have something which I have already given you, maybe a card, maybe that grid, and I will ask you those grid numbers again, or maybe a recovery key. So it actually tells, and you tell that mitigation step that you have taken as a third step. And in the fourth, you are very clearly saying that what are the safety measures that you can take to protect yourself. Maybe if you have this same password somewhere
Absolutely.
else, please change it. And most of us in India do it. I think across world, I was in one of the global leadership summit. The first thing was that I use the same password across accounts. Guys, one gets breached, everything is at stake. So we need to do that. And that's what you are telling them, that boss, if you have used it somewhere else, please change it. And that is, you can do it. And the last one is who you need to reach out. And I'm talking it very carefully here, because I know that significant data fiduciaries have mandated DPOs. But what about data fiduciaries? They have grievance officers. So some single point of contact. So that is my last thing that I will let them know. Like if it is your organization, Priya, you will say, please reach out to
Right.
Priya, or please reach out to this particular email ID if you have any concerns. So that's my response. And with all this, and why I actually took you through this, is to tell you what is this 72 hours all about. So why 72 hours, I think people can appreciate now. Over to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Karthik, with you really answered three questions in here that we wanted to address today. One is why this 72-hour breach notification window is important. And you also talked about what is the best way of notifying to data principals, and how organizations should be prepared for breach reporting to the board. And I think you touched on a very critical aspect. I think it's a self responsibility also. While the law is there to protect us, but there is something as a data principal we also need to take care of. We can't just keep things all open, same, and then expect breaches not to happen. We also owe that responsibility to ourselves. And I think one of the aspect also in this 72 hours is the rules doesn't talk about what is a high, medium, low kind of a breach. I think
Yes.
that is, we were expecting them to add at least some notification or details around it,
Hmm.
operational description around it, but they
Hmm.
have not classified any breach
Yeah.
as we are used to. We all kind of, the
Hmm.
moment we get a breach, we kind of add a low, medium, high severity to it,
Hmm.
but they have not
Yes.
included that. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think, Karthik, will be good to kind of understand, touch upon these three topics. What are the technology or process? I think that is very important. Or
Hmm.
technology or processes that can really help you to detect these breaches faster.
Yeah, I think that one of the critical area of detection of any breach is the kind of SIM source solution, the event management, the
Absolutely.
incident management solutions that we have. How fast can you go up the ladder to report a breach? And then definitely, as you mentioned, training is a very important aspect. The people who can detect are the first line responders of a data breach. I remember there was one breach where the receptionist actually caught the breach because the phones started ringing and people were saying that we are getting calls from your company. And she said there's something wrong here. And she went back into that hotline, and hotline immediately told the CISO that, yes, I think there has been a data breach. Maybe a AWS bucket was unauthorizedly there was a disclosure of it, and it got breached. So there has been instances where we see that technology as well as training has played a superb role.
Absolutely.
There is an important thing that happens with data breaches is that we do a lot of simulation exercises, because with the data breach, it's extremely important that all the templates are ready. Everybody knows what to do at what time. Various teams need to come and work together. So in one of the simulation exercises, we identified 6 to 7 departments coming together in order to making sure that that breach was handled properly. So all of that coordination takes a lot of time. Everybody, even a small media plan and communication plan goes a long way in making
Absolutely.
sure that breach is contained and within our hand. An important aspect is what is it that you are going to report to the Data Protection Board of India?
Absolutely.
And that is what is mentioned in the Rule 7.2, that it is talking about that what is it that without delay you will be telling about the breach, then within that 72 hours, what will you do? An important aspect that everybody in the call should know is that it is possible that you might just inform the board and ask for more time, because we know the kind of technologies and kind of dependence we have with the cloud environment coming in, with our data processors coming in. The most important aspect might be is to go in within 72 hours, inform what you have, and seek more time so that you can go back to the board with a very detailed report and what you have done with it and be in communication with them. So that is my take on the personal data breach, especially with respect to intimation of it under Rule 7.
Right. I think you covered all the aspects. You also kind of touched about, its impact on customer trust and how breach communication is really critical. And I think that summarizes it. And in interest of time, I think we can hand it over to Sua. Sua, let us know your thoughts about the Rule 7 with your expertise.
Thank you. I hope none of us have to be in the center of Rule 7 invocation ever in our careers, right?
Yeah.
I had to, um, not a small privacy one, an incident one, and from painful personal experience, I can share that it is a very, 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 very painful experience. And the unfortunate thing is that in today's day and world, you cannot presume it will not happen to you.
Absolutely.
The the philosophy of assume trust, assume breach means that you have to prepare yourself for the eventuality that it will happen to you. And how well we prepare within our organizations will determine how we navigate that painful 72 hours when the clock starts ticking.
Absolutely.
Uh, each one of these aspects can be a fireside chat story by itself, because typically
Yeah.
you know that, you know, nature of the breach. Often you don't know really. I mean, you think that is how it happened, but you are not sure. Should you commit in a communication this early? You do not know the extent of the breach. Is it 25% of the customer base? Is it all 100%? Should you err on the side of caution and start intimating even if you are not sure they were impacted? Timing, when did the hackers breach it? You think it's last week, but maybe it was last year, right? That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a deep forensic investigation which will never be complete in 72 hours. So it's always going to be about what how you put your best foot forward in consultation with the structure that you have prepared beforehand, with legal, with privacy, with DPO, with CISO, CIO, corporate communications. So that will make sure whether how painful your life is when it happens. So tying it all back, I think Rule 6 is to help prepare the organization implement the right controls. Rule 7 is a preparation for an unfortunate eventuality which we hope will never happen, but we prepare for it nevertheless. And in conjunction, I think this is the new world that privacy professionals will live in today. And in this community, I think it's the ideal forum to share, to brainstorm, to ideate, and to to validate our assumptions with our fellow community members. With that, back to Vikas.